Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Well, no, that's what I look at all the time. That's what you really give such great insight.
You're with your baby in the park alone on a summer night. You're deep in love, but you're far in the woods.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Ghouly Gentlemen. I'm Sid Partuja, and today is...
I'm Geek. Geek the Fun.
Geek the Fun. And today we're reviewing a Friday the 13th fan film called Never Hike in the Snow. This is a follow-up to the fan film Never Hike Alone, which is where it derives most of its title from. Funny enough, we've covered Never Hike Alone on the show before. It was me and I think Manos, if I remember correctly. So you can go check that episode out. I'll try to remember to leave that link in the description. I really quite liked Never Hike Alone. It was a pretty good one, and drawn out more so than this. So it was interesting to see a follow-up that's a lot shorter. Usually when a fan film does a sequel, they tend to go longer because they've got like the built-in fan base and stuff. So I was surprised by that, but it's a very different type of horror film this way. Did you watch Never Hike Alone by chance?
No,
in preparation
I
for this?
I didn't watch the first one. No, I did want to kind of, only just out of time convenience. But I do think it'd be interesting to have, like, does this work alone as a piece without prior experience to the thing, just as like a Friday the 13th. I know who Jason is and everything, but because there's like with YouTube videos as well, it is normally just, even if something's a sequel, most people who watch it aren't the same people who watched the first one, just because of how the YouTube algorithm works, especially a couple of years after it was released. So I think it's interesting to be able to see if it holds up as a standalone piece.
Mm-hmm. So what did you think of it as a standalone piece?
I thought this was really good. I was really impressed by this. This is probably, at least for this month, the best looking fan film we've touched by like quite a wide margin. In terms of the types of shots they get. Like, they have to have some kind of drones or what have you, because there's some really, like, wide, scraping location shots of, like, the forest, and when we get inside Jason's cabin, it's all dingy and dirty, and, like, it's really well put together as, like, a set. And obviously filming outside at night, being able to light that properly so you can see everything, while still making it look dark, I think was done really well. So just on that front alone, I was like, whoa, holy shit. This looks like better than a lot of the Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah, no. I was very impressed by the production value in this one. It's very much in line, and I do think it's fair to say exceeds the production value of their first film. And that's the thing I think that I was most impressed by with Never Hike Alone was it was just a very competently, very well shot, well put together fan film. I will say I think I liked the premise of Never Hike Alone a lot more than I cared for the premise of this one. It's interesting as a follow-up because, spoilers, I guess, the dude dies in Never... Or no, he doesn't die in Never Hike Alone, does he? He gets away at the very, very end. But like there's no situation under which that guy's gonna want to come back because it's like this very nick of his a skin of his teeth kind of situation that he survives. So to just take the premise of, all right, now Jason's just kind of wandering around the ruins of Camp Crystal Lake and people are gonna keep coming because of just the way the town works and stuff. I thought that was pretty interesting. It's interesting, but I don't think it I guess I didn't find it as engaging because the first one has a very survival movie kind of feel to it. This just does feel like your more typical setup or opening 20 to 30 minutes of a Friday the 13th movie. It was kind of weird watching this, wherein we have that scene of the cop kind of stalking the ruins of Camp Crystal Lake, and then he gets to the same room as Jason, and it's at that moment that it feels like the movie is going to start happening, and then it ends a minute later, which I thought was quite surprising.
Yeah, I was caught off guard by that as well, so I didn't know if the movie, the sequel to this, if that picked up from that in any way. From what you're saying, I'm guessing no.
The short version of Never Hike Alone is there's a YouTuber kind of guy who's a nature enthusiast, travel enthusiast kind of thing, and he's doing a kind of vlog thing about the area, and he kind of stumbles across Camp Crystal Lake, and then Jason starts trying to kill him, and the rest of the movie is about him trying to survive Jason, which he does at the very, very end. And he kind of gets into an ambulance that's being driven by Tommy Jarvis, who's a character from the Friday the 13th movies. Tommy Jarvis shows up again here. He's the guy that the cops arrest and stuff. And that's really the only, besides Jason, that's really the only similarity between the two films.
Okay, because again, that's what I feel like with Friday the 13th, kind of as a concept, it is almost that the connecting element is Jason and the light and the location, and then the stuff like Tommy Jarvis and stuff is kind of you can take it or leave it, but it's not necessarily, you don't need to be familiar with him particularly, because it's that type of archetype of the person, the Van Helsing, the Loomis, the person who knows the frat intimately is kind of a horror trope. So that I feel like is okay as an anthology. This is just seeing Jason in the snow is the pitch here, at least at the start, purely because that's a cool visual. Just that's a cool thing to show Jason in at a different time of day, where it isn't summer vacation and it isn't in the pitch black of night. It is the bleak white, and I think with the hockey mask it kind of fits even more. There's kind of a wintry theme there, with ice at the very least. So that I was immediately okay. This is just cool, but I was wondering if there's going to be more to it than that, and it's certainly not by any means an intricate plot or really much of anything, but I did like the attempt, at least, of showing some stuff with Jason on his own, and his kind of ritualistic behavior. I think is always a very interesting thing to do with that character of him just being a child at heart, and kind of that wandering, almost Frankenstein's monster kind of deal. They didn't have to do that. They really could have just stuck to, instead of that scene, do another kill. But I think the fact that they took the time to do that really does show that these are fans of the character of Jason, not just the iconography.
Yeah, and I do think that looked really, really good. The way they got kid Jason put on screen and stuff, I thought was really impressive. Especially the transition that they do for it of the mother lifting up the mask. I thought that was a very smoothly done visual transition, and it looked really, really good. And you're right, the visual of Jason stalking in the snow is really good. It's almost a shame that clearly the lake hadn't frozen over, because you kind of almost wanted to see him on the ice or something like that would have been really neat. But it is really cool. I think again, because the first film has this, I think the most impressive aspect is the utilization of the location. The fact that they're in the buildings with the Camp Crystal Lake signs and stuff, they actually went to the location to film. is just really cool and really impressive. There is a plot here outside of Jason himself, and I guess it's kind of seated in the first film and carries through. And that's just the idea of, like, Jason's continuing to murder people, and it seems that the town is kind of, like, covering it up and not wanting to like, deal with the problem, just kind of, like, letting him be and accepting that sometimes a couple people are just gonna die. And that's, like, the corrupted nature of the town or whatever.
Yeah, and that's kind of it gives me that old kind of classic horror monster vibe where, like, you start Dracula and all the villagers know exactly what's going to happen to Jonathan Harker, and they kind of just, they don't want to poke the bear. They're just like, this is just a thing that happens, don't go there, but fucking it's your problem, we're not going to try and save you, we don't care, we want him gone, kind of thing. And there's a lot of stuff with that, with, like, werewolf fiction and stuff, and it gives me that vibe of, like, they've fucking been with Jason, if you take the timeline of the movie, like, for, like, 30, 40 years at this point. But if you go, like, this movie is set in modern day, which I'm going to assume because of the technology they use, and it doesn't, with a character like Jason, it doesn't really matter. They set up to the fucking future, it's fine. So it is just part of the thing. They're never going to get rid of this, so it becomes this, like, dark secret that they just kind of have to deal with, and the ones who are in the know, like the older officer and stuff, just cover it up as best we can and just move on. I think is a really cool vibe to give to Crystal Lake outside of just the lake, because it implies, like, other shit going on with the town that is kind of its economy probably gets a little bit of tourist traction from the fact that there's, like, a boogeyman there. There's, again, little stuff like that, not really focused on in this film, but there's some implications with it, and I think that's neat when fans can, like, try and expand the world a little bit. I don't know if any of the movies have done that, but this is my first experience of that.
Yeah, I can't really say either. I'm not a huge Friday the 13th fan. I do think there's, like, between this and Never Hike Alone, I do think there's a weird, like, lore thing that's missing a little bit. Jason is admittedly a pretty indiscriminate killer. Like, he is kind of just a mad dog in a lot of ways. But I guess there's enough evidence for it, and I do prefer when we try to, like, just have a rule and play by it. And the rule with Jason is usually that he's, like, the biggest, like, scared straight, you know, virgin, like, anti-drug, you know, dare to do drugs, like, really changed Jason's whole fucking life. His whole, like, experience of, he was a kid, and some camp counselors that were supposed to be watching him were too busy hooking up, having sex, and so he drowned. And that's, like, Jason's origin. And so anyone that, like, teenagers that are sneaking around having sex or doing drugs or being irresponsible, Jason's going to kill the shit out of them for vengeance. And a lot of that comes from his mother being the actual villain of the first movie. But I like that as Jason's gimmick. I think that's, like, a solid gimmick that, like, there should be some level of provoking the wrath of Jason to come after you. And I do think it's a little bit unfortunate that Never Hike Alone and this just kind of, no, if you're just around him, he's just going to murder you. Like, if you stray too close to him, you are dead. And I think that's, like, a little, like, it's understandable because he is kind of an indiscriminate killing machine in a lot of his movies. But I think that makes him lose interest for me. And I prefer Jason to have some kind of like, condition. Not necessarily that it has to be followed to a T, but something to just give him a little more depth. and I think when you just make him that he just goes after everyone, it gets a little iffy for me, and I lose a little interest. And this does things to kind of mitigate that for me. Certainly the way it's presented visually and everything, that's all very impressive stuff. So it gets away with it, but it's just not, I guess, to my preference with Jason.
Mm-hmm. The thing I always go back to with that is the best scene in fucking Jason X, where they get like the hologram of like what his deepest things are, and it's just the fucking two women turn up. And it's like, hey, want to have unprotected sex and drink beer? And it just hard cuts to him fucking beating them against a wall with in a sleeping bag. It's just like, I like the fact that Jason's got like a trigger. I agree with that. I feel like that could be funny. It could be horrifying, but it's also it gives him more of a personality. It gives him more motivation. It gives him rules to play by. Especially if you got the idea right of like the town and the people involved are kind of, they know what's going on. If there's a set of rules to it, I think that's also more believable that they tolerate it. Like they just would, alright, just don't go fucking up there, or don't do beer in a Crystal Lake, because as long as you don't do that, he leaves you alone. So it's not our problem. I think that always makes it more believable with like the monster in the cave that like takes the young girls. It's like, well, they're just taking the young girls. It could be worse. So I feel like that. I think that gives a lot of again, it's that spooky kind of, the real monsters are the complacent ones kind of thing, and all that kind of thing, but also lets you have those rules. So I wonder if that's also like a limitation of making a YouTube fan film, of you can't, there's only so much you can get away with, like the nudity and like the sex stuff, but there's ways to show that without implying it at least, right? But you could have had the guy on his fucking phones looking at nudes or some shit.
Yeah. Or just, like he could just be drinking. That's one way to do it. Like he's coming out to the woods and like, you could present it one way of like, oh, it's so innocent. His mom, oh, he's a great photographer. And then you could just jump cut, and instead of taking pictures, he's just got some beer. And he's doing a thing a teenager does, to just go somewhere isolated and drink. That being said, like, there'd be also other ways that you could show it that could be kind of like amusing. Like if you showed some like really wholesome like father-son like camping or canoeing shit, and Jason just leaves them alone because it's like wholesome, and then like immediately goes and like murders a teenager that's drinking or smoking weed in the woods or whatever. Like I think that's the dynamic I'd like with Jason. And again, that's nothing against this film itself. What they're doing with Jason just going on killing sprees to murdering the shit out of anything that's near him is perfectly well established within the myriad of Friday the 13th films. That's just a thing that happens. So it's not like it's unjustified. It's just not to my preference, and I think the character is stronger without it, without leaning just into those gimmick kills, I guess. I don't like the body count Jason movies, where it's just like, how many people is he going to kill this time? I forget the comedian, but guy back in the early 2000s, Comedy Central Presents, had a bit about how stupid the kids were in the Friday the 13th movies. Like, you could fucking strangle them with a cordless phone. And it's just... like, I really do kind of agree with that, where it just, like, the Friday the 13th franchise just went on and on and on for so long that it just got to be about racking up body counts and kill counts and stuff, and lost interesting things about the character. And I think this film, to its credit, does a lot of interesting character things. You mentioned, of course, with Jason. I quite liked that, like, after we see him die, we humanize the opening murder victim thing. Because a lot of horror movies will open like that, right? With, like, this is the character that is sacrificed to show you the premise of what the killer is capable of. Like, how the killer works, what their rules are, or just to to get you, get your appetite whet for the bloodbath horror movie.
Right.
And to open in that way and then spend a good chunk of this 30-minute film showing that character's backstory and his family and like going into his room and looking at the photographs he's taken and stuff. That's a really like interesting twist to make, to give the character way more depth than the character in his role would ever get in a proper film, in a studio film. Let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's there's like a testament to that, because not only do you get sympathy from like the getting to see the mother and learn more about the backstory, like really playing with that, it avoids the thing you were talking about, like the body count, because then it really lets you sit in with the horror of just one death, and even if that guy, we didn't know much about him at the time, because you want to. It's a tricky thing to balance with horror movies, right? Because when you're watching a movie that has Jason Voorhees in it, you want people to get killed, right? Like you don't want to just watch the movie where he's become a passive. I mean, I watched that movie. That just sounds pretty interesting. But like part of the Freddy Krueger, like the slasher films, you're going to it to see some level of carnage. You're going to see some level of enjoyment, because you want to have that thrill of the action scenes with all of the scares and the frights and stuff. That's what you're going there for primarily, or at least in part. So when you're an audience member and you don't know the character, like it isn't the main protagonist, and they are kind of fodder, for lack of a better term, you do want Jason to kill them. You do want Jason to get the cool, like, shocking scare thing. Like, part of you is not necessarily rooting for that person to get away inherently. And I think some things can make the mistake of trying to make you care about them beforehand, because then it makes the audience conflicted, but by doing what they do here is you get to have the fucking like, oh my god, this dude got fucked, like he gets it really bad, like god damn, and you get to have like the kind of inherent like cheesy gore fun of that. But then after the fact, once the scene's over, once Jason's not there, once the weight can hit you, and then you spend time like kind of sitting with the aftermath of that, I think there's a really effective job of kind of having your cake and eating it too. Is you get to have the disposable fodder character, but you also get to have the audience feel like, whoa, this is bad, which I think lots of kids to struggle with. So I think that was a smart choice.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's really interesting. It also helps to, spend some time highlighting the story they're trying to build up about the nature of this town and what's going on with it, which I think, like, it's funny because it almost necessitates, like, a deeper lore thing for the town, because Jason just keeps coming the fuck back and keeps, like, surviving and just all kinds of hell. You're like, I mean, just at this point, something has to be protecting him to some degree or another. And I kind of like that the sheriff's thing is, crap, this again. All right, just clean it up. I'll file the report. And you get the sense that, like, he's hiding this stuff every time one of these happens. And that's inherently interesting. Because he doesn't want a circus, because we've seen in the films what happens when, like, the military or what the fuck ever gets involved with Jason Voorhees. Just like, he's literally unkillable, and you get the sense that this guy knows that. So like, accepting that like you were saying earlier, monster in a cave scenario is actually better off for not only his town but the whole fucking world.
Yeah, there's a lot under the hood with this one, which again I don't know if they're planning to make more, because these seem to be very successful.
I thought it was interesting. They released a ghost cut, they called it, where it's this and Never Hike Alone and another short thing they did cut into one movie. I found that after the fact when I was just going through their channel looking for fan film trailers for this.
It's really interesting.
So I am curious to see how it all watches together, because they apparently included some extra stuff too. So Might have to check that out at some point in the future.
Because again, I think the advantage you have with Jason is you need a big guy, and you need the mask. But the big guy can be hard to get, but if you've got enough money to be filming in locations like this and hiring actors, probably one of the cheaper assets you're gonna get. There's plenty of just bodybuilders and witnesses. You just need that presence, and even then, how you shoot them can add a lot. Like, you don't need to see them if it's just got like a really buff guy, but not necessarily really tall. You can film them from longer distance or lower shots and make it look taller than they actually are. Like, a lot of ways you can go around that. But if you've got those, you're kind of sad because there's no powers involved. You're not looking at Freddy Krueger dream sequences. You're just looking at someone who is really fucking strong and tanky, and what they can do with weapons, and the practical effects from that can be very impressive, like they do here with the a lot of head wounds in this one.
I'm still trying to like piece out how they did that scene with the axe in his face, and the fact that he's like squirming around and moving. I'm like, is he buried under the snow and you're only seeing like the top half of his face against the rest of like a prosthetic? Is the axe just like a prosthetic that he's chewing on, and that's how he's like delivering the scene? Like, what is going on there? I was very, very fascinated to look at that, because like when you look at him, his arms are kind of like down, like that. I like speculating about this, like how they do it stuff in fan films, because it can't be too difficult. Like, it has to be relatively achievable at a really cheap budget. So I'm like, the more I'm thinking about, like, because he's laying down and his arms don't go to grab the axe, but his hands are still moving. So I'm wondering, like, legit if he's like buried underneath like a dummy of himself to a certain degree, because it's really well integrated. I'm very, very curious how they managed that one.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a behind the scenes thing or anything for this.
Yeah, I might have to look into it. I go back and forth on whether I should watch those before a review, but sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's just dependent on time, and I didn't have it today. But it was just incredibly interesting. Obviously, it's a pretty well done prosthetic, because we see like the dead body version of him way later in the film, and that looks really good. Let's talk for a little bit about like the thing that I was kind of let down by on this one, which like I respected all the time they spent like setting things up, but I do feel kind of let down by the ending of this. Did you have that at all?
Yeah, I did. When they cut to credits, I was like caught off guard by it. I was like, well, this didn't feel like we resolved anything. This didn't feel like it came to a natural conclusion. I wonder how much of that might be due to we really want to up the quality of it, but we don't have a lot of time to shoot, so we're gonna make just kind of almost like a prologue, and like the real meat of the thing is our previous film. But even then, I feel like there's still you could wrap it up tighter if you really want to go and maybe get like a confrontation with the police or what have you. But it just felt like just as things were about to move into like act 3 is when we cut. Which I was caught off by that as well.
Yeah, I think that was for me the biggest negative I had with it is like it. I'll admit I wasn't like super 100% engaged, because Friday the 13th really just isn't my jam, but I was engaged with it. It was doing a good enough job keeping my attention and making me want to see more, to the point where like the way that it ends did feel very unsatisfying and kind of left a like, oh really, that's it, taste in my mouth by the end of it. So I will give it some flack for that, is I don't think that was a good choice to end it with very little resolution to the things that are happening. Like Tommy Jarvis, so he fucking went to jail? I guess. Like, it just doesn't feel like a properly resolved film in that regard. And they might be planning to make more. This came out about a year ago, as of this recording. So they may be planning another sequel that's gonna, like, tie up the Tommy Jarvis loose end or something, or like, it feels like it's been leading to a confrontation between those two characters, Tommy and Jason again. But I don't know. I didn't particularly care for the way that it ended as is. The experience of just watching this after having watched the first one a couple years back, that did feel a little iffy to me.
I feel like that's an entirely fair critique of, if you're going to do something that's kind of meant to be short and sweet, don't set things up that you're not going to pay off. Like, keep it purely to the elements you want to focus on and resolve them out, so you're not... Because I think this would be a different situation if this was the first one they did. Mm-hmm. They did the second one, because, okay, this was them just testing the waters, and then they made the full film later. This is the second thing you did, or like even the third, because you said that it's another short film, I don't know, but they're established by this point. They've got a lot of viewers, they know what the audience is. I feel like you shouldn't be setting shit up that you might not pay off like a couple of years down the line at that point. If you already, then you should just be like, all right, let's just wait to release this and just film more. Let's just make a bigger one, like a 2-hour film or something like that. Maybe that would be crossing the line, and companies might start getting involved with copyright at that point. But I don't know. It did feel like a weird place to cut. At the same time, in this kind of anthology Jason adventures, like kind of like a horror comic you pick up one issue of, it gave me that kind of vibe. So I didn't think it's the worst thing in the world, but I do definitely think something that could be improved upon in future.
Yeah, for sure. And again, they might be planning to make another one. I saw some Kickstarter information on their channel, but I don't know if that was for making this or for what. I didn't have a ton of time to look into it. Just, food for thought, if nothing else. Because if I didn't look into it, then I can guarantee you, of the 3 million people that watched your first film, a lot of them didn't either. So it's worth keeping that in mind. You kind of want your answers to all be in the thing itself. Never hike alone, no trespassing. No, that's just excerpts from the original film. I can't seem to find anything to indicate if they're doing Never Hike Alone Kickstarter trailer. No, that's just a re-upload. I can't seem to find anything that they're doing beyond this, so we'll see. I guess we will find out in the future. Oh wait, Never Hike Alone, the 6-part Friday the 13th fan web series. I don't know, I'm confused. I don't know what's going on with it. Is there a playlist? Anyway, I think that'll do it though for this one. Unless you got anything else you wanted to talk about.
I like the Jason mask design in this, because that can change on a couple of things, and I think this is dirty enough and scratched up enough so it looks scary while still not being like a fucking mess, which some of them I think go too far with. So it's like pretty good job on the costume design for Jason here. He looked Jason-y.
he looked like Jason.
Hey man, that could be a hard thing in fan films to get right.
Sometimes. Still not my favorite Friday the 13th fan film though. But that's okay. The one where he became Santa Claus.
I gotta watch that one now. Ella.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. Anyway, alright everyone, thanks so much for watching. I guess we'll go ahead and go on to ratings real quick. I'll give this 3.5 out of 5 body camera shots.
I'll give this 4 out of 5. Mummy hugs. Ah.
Oh man. Alright. Well, next time on Geeky Gentlemen will be in History Month, but historically rooted fan films, not a very deep well, so we'll just be going back to regular
y'all
fan
ain't
films for
seen
that.
Jane Austen X Sonic?
Yeah,
Fake
no,
fan.
unfortunately. So we'll just be going back to regular fan films for that. And we'll be starting with Spider-Man Cake Day by Corridor Crew. It's from 2018, 6 million views, so we'll be sure to give a talk about that and hopefully send them a few viewers. They could really use it, obviously. Anyway, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the champion of the oppressed.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.
Ha 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 ha!